So boom, Flakko is reacting to the beef between Satan the Sinner and Sharp from No Jumper and Soft White Underbelly. You know, and basically the beef that they have going on, Sharp thinks that Satan the Sinner is a fake pimp. Satan the Sinner doesn't appreciate that. So he responds to the video, starts going at him and shit. You know, I'm not gonna lie. Satan the Sinner sitting across from Sharp on No Jumper would have been A1 steak sauce gold, because Satan the Sinner is very sharp. He don't take no shit. And it would have went really left with all the yellow Sharp like to do. It would have went really left. So that would have been good, but now that shit is not going to happen. But listen, there's just one part that I want to address, that I want to react to. And my platform is not big as I need it to be for certain videos like this to thrive, but it is a topic that has been on my mind since Dejon Paul called fucking AD and T-Rail employees. You know, I've been wanting to do this type of video, so I'm going to play the clip.
Need your medals. You ain't nobody to be giving out medals. You's a motherfucking worker. You are an employee. You heard me?
Damn. Yo, I feel like that's... only in our community, man, is being a worker a bad thing, bro. I don't understand it. So look, if I'm an entrepreneur, right? So look, let's say this, right? Let's say this. I'm an entrepreneur for 30 years, right? Let's say this. I became an entrepreneur at 20 years old, and I was an entrepreneur for 45 years, and I retired at 65. But as an entrepreneur, I made, let's say, $75,000 for 45 years on my own as an entrepreneur. If I'm a worker, and let's say I worked for 45 years and I made $100,000 a year for 45 years and I retire. We're both retiring, right? We're both retiring, but I'm retiring with a little bit more. So at that point, is being a worker really shameful? If I had an employer for 45 years until I retire, you worked on your own for 45 years until you retire, but at the end of the day, I'm retiring with more money. Is being a worker still shameful? Like, I never understood this, right? And I never understood why being a worker or an employee was an insult, and I never understood why people took it as an insult.
All right, so we're going to talk about a term that I coined. And this is the first time using it on this channel, boss culture. We're going to talk about boss culture. So we're going to talk about the root of boss culture. I don't want to drag this video out too long, so I'm not going to go in a super in-depth explanation, but I'll just say it like this. What we're talking about is two people who are supposed to be pimps. That is street activity. Anybody that's in the streets, they consider themselves a boss. No matter how delusional it is, no matter how, untrue it is, every single individual wants to be considered a boss. They do not want to be considered a worker, an employee, anything of the sort. Now, the question you ask after that is, why is that the case? Well, one thing that you hear a lot of street people say, as far as especially like rappers, they brag about never having had a job. So to them, you got to look at how that breaks down. I never had a job says I never, was a civilian. I never fed into the system y'all feed into as far as civilians and stuff like that. I'm better than you, et cetera, all this shit. Now, the one aspect that matters most in this context is at a job, you are an employee and you have a boss. Almost no matter where you're at within, the shit, as far as the structure of a job, you're going to have someone you answer to. Now, when you look at old gangs and stuff like that, of course, they had hierarchies and stuff like that, as far as organized crime and stuff like that. Everybody had to answer to somebody. It was only one head honcho as far as the top of the gang, one Don. Now, the thing that I'll just highlight so we can wrap this up, what it is a sense of power, a sense of control, a sense of rebellion, that they don't have to answer to anybody, that they don't conform to society, all of this type of shit. It's all encompassed within being a boss. You know, and it really holds a lot of weight, not just amongst other dudes and stuff like that, but when you can tell a chick, I'm a boss, so can't nobody tell me what to do. It's all pride shit. Now, I want to get to this part as far as the delusion. You know, I'm just going to highlight Dame Dash very quick, and it's not necessarily because he's delusional, but it's to point something out. The terms that people like to use, you got to look back at that Breakfast Club interview, and he likes to say that he's a boss. The people who work for him, they were all bosses and stuff like that, something along those lines, you know, and also that Def Jam didn't own or run shit that he did. They had a partnership. So it's all about that control, right? Let's get away from him and let's go to the streets and stuff like that. So if you have somebody at the bottom tier of a drug operation selling crack out of a trap house or out of the streets and stuff like that, that individual considers himself a boss. Why? Because he controls his hours. He controls his work hours. He's working and getting the money for himself and stuff like that. But this is where the delusion comes in. He has to give the money to someone else. So if he is a part of, like, let's say a clique of niggas that sell drugs, we will call this individual above him the distributor. We'll call him that. So boom, the distributor is a person who comes to this guy and says, yo, look, I just got this work. You know, you take this work, you sell this work. This is my work you're selling because I paid for it as the distributor. You didn't pay shit. You're going to go hustle for me. You're going to get this money. You're going to get all this off within a certain time frame. You keep a certain amount of money, but this is what I need back from this amount that you sell it for. So that individual has to answer and give the money to. He has to pay another individual so that he can continue to work and get work and all that stuff. Now, you could call that a partnership if you want, but it's not. You have a boss. That's why you see niggas like Franklin Saint running in the fucking trap. And granted, yeah, it's fiction and stuff like that, but you know how this shit works in real life. When we talking about, niggas love to call like the distributor the plug and stuff like that, but that's not necessarily the plug. That's just the person who gets the drugs and shit like that. That's, yeah, he has the packs and stuff like that, whatever. But that's just to highlight some of the delusion as far as a nigga that's actually like in reality, you are working for another individual, but you a boss. So that's the street culture part of this shit. This shit has existed in street culture since its inception, since gangs, since motherfucking heroin, all this shit. That's always existed. Every individual, you know, loves the power and they think that they a boss. Now, this is the thing about the boss culture shit. It's rooted in the streets, but it doesn't stop in the streets. Around the time Rick Ross came out as an individual that, you know, lived in the hood, his whole childhood, whole life type shit, I began to see the boss culture hit civilians, black people, the black community specifically. When you see Rick Ross start calling himself a boss, when you see I'm hustling and all that starting to get big and stuff like that, you know, you got the You the Boss song and all that shit with Nicki Minaj, like that began to come, that became a mantra amongst regular black people. I'm a boss, I'm a boss, I'm a boss. So when you see people start saying that, you start to see actual black people who clock in at a 9 to 5. I began to see coworkers who were at the bottom of the total pole. I'm talking entry level positions at the jobs I've worked, call themselves bosses. Women, men, it's not limited to just niggas. Women call themselves bosses, niggas. You could be fired. You could be fired and you can file for unemployment. You are literally an employee and you are literally not even a supervisor at this job. And even being a supervisor doesn't necessarily make it. I mean, you could say it makes you a boss because you have employees under you and stuff like that. But it's something powerful. Like, niggas really get into that bag. And you ask yourself, why do niggas get into this bag and also become delusional as some of the street niggas? And it's basically the same delusion of them being controlled in a situation that they're not in control of. They want to feel like they're in control, but also it's a pride thing. And also, in this sense, it's trendy at this point. It's trendy to say you're a boss. Somebody like Flakko, of course he couldn't get, I mean, you know, the one reason I say he wouldn't be able to get it is because he's a sensible individual. He's a sensible individual. I don't, you know, he may be, and this is not me saying that he is, I'm just saying it's possible that he's delusional in other areas, but it's not something that I've seen frequently, quite often, or just that I can even pinpoint for real. Most of the time I see him, he's a sensible individual. And that's how come he talks about the gang shit like he does, because he's a sensible individual that can see it for what it actually is. Ridiculous. But outside of that, when it comes to the street stuff, if you watch this full video, I may link it in the comments. You know, he doesn't catch a lot of what's being put down. He doesn't pick up what's being put down. And that's because he's not, you know, educated on the street shit that much, as far as like, especially the pimping and stuff like that. So like, you know, he said like in that video that pimping doesn't have fighting and stuff like that. Pimps fight, you know, so that's not no anti-pimp code. Pimps also shoot. These are facts. But the point of me even bringing up the first point is you have to pretty much, especially as a civilian that is not an entrepreneur and actually clocks in and works for somebody else, you have to be delusional, or you have to be like some type of like, you just gotta be, you gotta try to twist the meaning in some type of way to where you feel like you're in control of the situation in a way that you actually are. So let's answer his first point, or his first question. You know, if one guy makes more money than the other guy throughout their career, as far as a worker making more than the boss, you know, in different situations, you know, is being a worker still shameful? Listen, being a worker to a sensible civilian that doesn't prescribe to boss culture, as far as black culture and stuff like that, somebody that doesn't subscribe to that, they don't have a problem with being called a worker. They don't. It's not an insult. It can't be an insult. But this is the thing when we talk about boss culture, black culture, niggas. This is the thing. You see all these, I don't want no 50-50. You see all these fucking podcasts where these birds sit on the fucking couch and get to talking. These young hoes, these young black, and it's not all black women, but the rat bitches, they want a fast money nigga. If you are a young electrician, if you are a young motherfucking IT nigga, None of that shit matters. What type of money you bringing in? It'll matter to some babes. Don't get it twisted. But to these young rats, it will not matter. It will not matter because they care about how a nigga is getting this money. See, when you are a air quote boss, you don't have a schedule. You don't have someone who has to give you PTO and then you got to give them the PTO to make a move. If a bitch want to go somewhere like Turks and Caicos or some shit, and this nigga got the money to go to Turks and Caicos, or even Jamaica, or even fucking Sandusky, Ohio or some shit, to fucking Cedar Point or wherever the fuck. If a nigga wants to do any of that, he could drop what he's doing and do that. That's just what it is. So you got to look at it like that. The piece of the pride that niggas have in being in control of their own situation and stuff like that. You could say, oh, this expands the entrepreneurs and white entrepreneurs. It does. But again, we're talking about boss culture and why niggas get called workers. You don't see Andrew Tate like, you're a worker. You don't see motherfuckers over there degrading each other like that. That's not what they do. Gary Vee is not like, you're a worker. That's not something that they do over there. But to these niggas who subscribe to this shit and care about what these bitches think, who really want a fast money nigga and shit like that, yes, it's going to be shameful to be a worker. It's going to be shameful no matter if, no matter if the nigga is Bill Gates. No matter if the nigga is Bill Gates and he got the most paper in the motherfucking world. You see how I use the word paper? He got the most paper in the world. Niggas will point at him and be like, man, that's cool, whatever. But Bill Gates is a boss. We could just say like some high executive at Amazon that really don't got a name. Nobody gives a fuck about that nigga or what he got going on. But you know, he won't be ashamed and nobody will think it's shameful. But nobody in the streets gives a fuck about the CFO of Amazon. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. You can't go up to the CFO of Amazon and say, nigga, you know, I get more money than you, because you don't. You can't go up to the CFO and say, nigga, you a worker. Who the fuck gives a fuck if he's a worker? He's made more money. So that just kills, like, that's the whole point on that. Like, it's two different worlds. You know, it's two different worlds, and that's something that, you know, Flakko with that question, he doesn't understand this at all because he's a sensible individual. That's just what it is. So now the last thing, and this applies to not only Sharp, but this applies to the AD and Dejon Paul situation. How is this an insult and why is it taken as an insult? You should be able to put the dots and connect the dots after everything that I've said. One of the things that AD said when Dejon Paul called him an employee is, we do whatever we want around here. We got all types of shit around here, et cetera, et cetera. Now, their first response was, both of them, like, who you calling an employee? We motherfucking bosses in this bitch, nigga. We bosses in this bitch, nigga. That was the initial response. Now, I'm positive. Yeah, it was a little like, you know, because they was making jokes about him and stuff like that. And I think his tone was definitely like, you know, he was being a little condescending a little bit. Like, you know, y'all, he was basically saying, y'all not fit to give me consultation for the shit that I do. He explained himself a million times. But I don't think him calling them employees was him trying to be on some street disrespect insult shit. I think the insult was him saying they're not qualified to give him advice. You know, but the employee part is what they stuck on. Now, all that aside, when you look at that, that is an insult as far as the things AD said. It's an insult because it implies that we are not bosses. And what is it that comes with a boss? I'm in control of my situation. I don't have to answer to nobody. Nobody can tell me shit, etc., etc. That's what it comes down to. For a street dude, it's that part of their pride and ego to where I answer to no one. I control my situation. You saying I'm a worker is highly disrespectful because who am I working for? This nigga over here? He can't tell me shit to do. Fuck you. That's what it is. So, you know, and it does, and this is the thing. When it came to the no jumper shit, it don't matter if Adam was giving him a paycheck. It don't matter if Adam told, you know, he actually called the shots and said you are no longer on the Thursday or Tuesday show, whatever fucking day it was. It don't matter that Adam has supreme control over how the platform operates over there, and they were on the platform getting paid on payroll, following his directions, doing you know to any extent. Even though they could smoke in there, they could come and go as they please. They got, you know, they could not show up and not get no fucking whatever. It doesn't matter how much control Adam had of the actual situation. If they could finagle the shit anyway to feel like they have control of the situation and not be feeling like, you know, they got to answer to this nigga to some extent. And if they could label it anything else, this is a partnership, this is a joint venture, they will do that, because being an employee is the worst thing you could be as a street nigga. I guarantee you some street nigga somewhere making Subway sandwiches is calling himself a boss. I guarantee you that. Somewhere in America, it is a motherfucking gangster putting together a fucking sub. He kind of done with the streets or whatever. He just putting together a sub, bro. He might be on motherfucking, this might be a parole job. He putting together the Subway sub. He's gonna tell you he's a boss. That's just what it is. And when it comes to AD&T Rail, and look, when I say this shit, I'm not trying to disrespect. I get it. You got to understand that I'm breaking this shit down as far as the psyche of this shit. But what they are actual bosses of is Fig Community World, Back on Fig, and Community. They have 100% control over those platforms. They also control who gets paid, who doesn't get paid. They can control who can come in here, who can't come in here. They have 100% full control of their platforms. They did not have 100% control of No Jumper. I don't even know if they had employees under them that they told to do stuff to where they was in a supervisor. I don't know that. I don't care either. But the whole point is, when you talk about everything that's mentioned as far as why this shit is an insult and why it's shameful, if I had to boil it down to one word, it would be pride. But if I had to boil it down to two words, it would be pride and control. That is the video. I know this was a long bitch, but you know, if you made it to the end, say wabbledy dabbledy. I fuck with y'all, I'm out.